Hey y'all, I am back and it is time to remap your mind so we create a life of your design. I am so excited because I have a repeat guest, a guest that we had a few weeks ago. I don't even know how many weeks ago by the time this podcast has come out. But B. Russ is with us. And if you remember, if you've been listening, he was one of my first guests, and we talked about hip hop and healing. And it was such a great conversation because we started to bring this conversation around mental health and empowering mental health in creative ways and educating on mental health in creative ways. And so we're back today to talk a little bit about breaking the stigma, particularly in our community, but also knowing that it's not just our community that suffers. So welcome back, B. Russ. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. It's good to have
Good.
you back. I was just
It's
excited to
awesome.
see
It's
you
great
on
to
the
be back.
on the schedule to record.
Yeah.
So reintroduce yourself for the people who might be new to the podcast. Reintroduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is B. Russ. I'm an artist, a hip hop artist. I've been doing music for over half my life at this point. So that's something that I'm passionate about, but I'm equally as passionate about healing and mental health, particularly in our community, but for everybody basically. So those are the two areas that I'm very passionate about and building a brand, trying to incorporate both of those areas. So
Yes, yes. Wait, so now you said, I'm gonna mess with you, right? So you said over half your life,
Mhm.
which is how old?
I'm 32.
Ooh, 32. You
Yep,
know what
yep.
I love? Because see, what most of the people don't know about me is I'm about to be 46 in a couple of weeks. By the time
Wow.
this podcast comes out, I will have hit that big 4-6. So here's what I love, because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts who are led by a lot of young Black men and women. And what I love the most is to see the are you still considered a millennial, or are you the next generation beyond that?
I think I might be. I want to be considered one, maybe, but I think I might be the generation behind. Like I'm the tail end, if so. But yeah, I think I might
You're
have
like
missed it.
the bridge like that. You're like the generation Y of our generation, right? Like
Right, right.
so you could be a millennial, could be an X,
Yeah.
late millennial, early Gen Z kind of
Right,
thing.
right.
Right. But a lot of the podcasts that I had been listening to are men of your age, women of your age talking about mental health.
Mhm.
And what I love about that is that in our generation, there's been such a stigma around any type of like depression, anxiety, any mental health illness that we don't talk about it. It gets missed,
Mhm.
and therefore we have a lot of just undiagnosed stuff in our community.
Yeah.
And to hear the younger people talking about it earlier and dealing with it earlier and spreading awareness so much earlier is just such a gift,
It
right?
is.
Because that means maybe we're doing something right. Maybe you're seeing us sort of pave a pathway by starting to wake up and talk more about it. and
Mhm.
and that I know that, like, my son, who's somewhere down in the generation I don't know that has been named yet, will
Mhm.
come up so much more aware of being taking care of himself and being aware of what's going on within his mind and his body.
Yeah. I think as much as over the years people have talked about a lot of the negative things with social media, I'm really a firm believer that social media has had a huge hand in normalizing a lot of things that were taboo before, because
Mhm.
even when I was younger, prior to like YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and things like that, or Facebook, when it was just really you know AOL and instant message, that type of thing.
You remember
I do barely, but I do
that?
remember it though. But like at that time, I feel like there really wasn't a platform, or it, they just hadn't been used a whole lot in that way to talk about some of these issues. But then, especially like when YouTube came around, and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, people were able to express how they felt about different things. And I feel like even since then, it's evolved even more to where now, people have found solid lanes to speak about different things and provide like value in different areas. So I just feel like that's one thing that I feel like has changed in a really good way since, at least from back, I'll say like even just 15 years ago,
Yeah.
honestly. So I think it's really good to see. I'm happy that it's turned into this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this space is going to continue to look like to speak about these things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think that even now, some of our, some of like our entertainers are speaking out about mental illness, and I think it gives voice to um, to those who feel like they've had to suffer in silence because of
Hmm.
this whole stigma. And so it's really when we are able to use social media for the benefit for a higher purpose, then it really does create such a widespread awareness of things that people might not have had awareness about, and
Yeah.
in communities and in age groups that previously may have been going in a particular direction can get pulled into this awareness. You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Yeah. And I feel like, I can't really say which came first. Like, did the kind of like social awareness come first and influence the way that, we use social media, or the reverse way? Like, society really started seeing like, wow, this is really happening with all these people. We need to like
Hmm.
collectively kind of change the way that we look at these things. But nonetheless, I am happy because I feel like we're in a really an interesting phase. We have been for a little while, but I really feel like it's coming to a head now where a lot of the structures that were in place, a lot of the ideals about, what it is to be a man or what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a black man or woman, what it is to be, all of these things are kind of being turned on their heads, because I think people are realizing like th- these definitions, or certain boxes that they've tried to put us in, don't really serve us anymore in the direction that we're going. So it is nice to see like on a larger level, like on a global level, or definitely a social level, it's nice to see the mindset starting to change a little bit. I'm happy to see that. I really am.
Yeah. So it's interesting, before we pressed record, we were chatting before the show, and you were talking about being a first responder. And
Mhm.
I just, it really kind of opened my eyes because, on this show, we talk a lot about stigma in the Black community. We talk a lot about and Black empowerment. But one of the things you said that I thought was really key was that as a first responder, when you show up, it's not you're seeing that it's not just us.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's this misconception, or I'm not even going to say a misconception, because in some of the times historically it has been true, as far as, um, certain groups of people have been, disenfranchised, or, for different reasons why you may think that a lot of the people that are in poverty, especially in Atlanta, are going to be black, or, they're going to be certain ways. But I think, and having a job like this and really treating every situation differently and pulling up to, some of these locations, and they could be smack dab in Atlanta, where it typically could be a black area, but it may not be black people. It could be a number of people. It could be, Asians. It could be black people. It could be people from Africa. It could be white people. It literally could be anybody. And when you really get down and talk to them about, their stories and their experiences, it's just really interesting to see um how, some of these people's lives have panned out, because, some of them used to be executives, some of them used to be maybe fellow musicians, some of them
Mhm.
were, whatever the case may be, and something just happened, whether it be, a traumatic event, something that set them down a path of, mental instability at the time, and they just got too far behind on things. And then, here comes the cycle of homelessness and poverty and things like that. So, um, yeah, my eyes have been open a whole lot in working in this capacity as it relates to just learning more about the people that are really dealing with a lot of these, a lot of these issues.
Yeah, yeah. And it is interesting because, you don't know people's stories,
Hmm.
and i- it's mental illness is indiscriminate, you know.
Hmm.
And so we have to begin to understand that in all of, like, in us who are um, mentally well, who have family histories, who may think this is something that could never happen in our family, who have certain conversations about mental illness. We have to begin to shift and look at the fact that it is indiscriminate. And so as you have people in your life, family members particularly, who you may not know are suffering, we have to be able to take a closer look. Because I think that's where things begin to slip, is when family members, friends don't notice the signs. They don't
Hmm.
notice the signs, and they think, oh, they write people off, or they haven't already sort of always listening about, oh, they've always been a little crazy, or all this, they've always been a little local, or
Yeah.
they've always been a little moody, or whatever that is, right? Or they're strong, they can handle it.
Hmm.
That's a really dangerous one.
Yeah.
Oh, they always pull through. They're strong. They'll handle it. When someone may be walking the line, teetering on the edge. So I think that that's also important. That, being able to, number one, the person who's dealing with it have a safe space to be able to talk about it with people in their lives, but
Hmm.
also family members recognizing that something is going on, that maybe it's not just they're just a little crazy, or they're just a little this, or they're just a little that, right? That's
Yeah.
part of the stigma in and of itself.
Right. I agree with that. I'm even thinking back on when I was younger and certain parts of my family talking about maybe some other family members that had, like, whether it be like a some type of nervous breakdown or like mental break or something like that. The way that it was described was, kind of like you were just describing. It wasn't described with the same urgency as, if they were talking about, yeah, cousin so and so has cancer, or they have diabetes, or they have whatever that's like a clear, considered a clear illness, like they need
Hmm.
some help because this is what's going on. But then when it deals with the mental, it's more like you were saying, like, oh, you know how so and so is, or they
Hmm.
always been like that. They always been a little, off
A
or
little
whatever
off.
the case. Yeah, but it's
That's
like,
the.
yeah, and then you know, I think on my end, like, thankfully, I did have certain family that was very like understanding about mental illness, so I learned a lot about it. But if I didn't have that, then I'm thinking about everyone else that might be in that position that may grow up under a family like that, that kind of downplay mental illness because they haven't been taught that it's a serious issue. And yeah, uh cousin so and so can get it just like the person down the street can get it, like,
Hmm.
and there's it's okay, like, it's no shame, like, we're not
Hmm.
gonna play cousin so and so to the left, or only invite them to certain family fun. I just feel like all of that plays into the stigma,
Yeah,
you know.
that's so true. I think it's even the language of mental breakdown. I mean, like,
Mhm.
the way that that's taken, the way that it's said, the context is in which it's used is
Mhm.
like it's a weakness.
Yeah.
Oh, they had a nervous breakdown or a mental breakdown, right? And
Mhm.
the way it's used is is an has a negative connotation, as opposed to, something happened, or is experiencing someone is experiencing this,
Right.
like an extreme amount of stress, and then this happened, right? No,
Mhm.
they had a nervous breakdown. And then with the people who, let's say, you're in a family, and the family's like, oh, you know how cousin so and so is, they've always been off. If there's someone else around that's listening to that, who's experiencing like a depression or an anxiety, it just is an unconscious message. Oh, I can't speak up around these people. And
Mhm.
it perpetuates the whole suffering and silence, because you already know your family's like, oh, well, they think that's crazy, they think that's weak, they think that's this. So then who do you talk to?
Right.
You're around your friends, and your friends are, joking about it or not taking it seriously, then okay, well, these people are not safe. Or if you're in a corporation and a colleague makes a joke about another colleague that
Mhm.
had some type of mental episode or breakdown or whatever, then you're not, as a colleague, going to say anything, right? Or
Yeah.
if your license, like in our industry, if your
Mhm.
license is questioned or put in jeopardy when you talk about having reached out for help before, then you're
Yeah.
not going to say anything. And so it's on so many levels, like on the family level, on the community level, on the work level. When we perpetuate this negative stereotype or this negative stigma around having any type of mental, let's say, unwellness, right?
Mhm.
Mental unwellness, because it's not always the extreme, even if it's um like there's situational depression or seasonal affective disorder,
Mhm.
or whatever it is,
Right.
even grief can be stigmatized. And you have some corporations that'll be like, all right, you've grieved enough, come back to work now.
Right.
you know and so then it just perpetuates the suffering in silence.
It does. I think um kind of what I'm getting from all of this is how important creating the right environment is to be able to break the stigma, because usually in environments where you feel like it can't be talked about, or things like that, I feel like those type of environments breed misconception a whole lot, because no one can just clearly come out and say, hey, this is what's going on. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think those environments are really important. And I've experienced different environments as it relates to that, but it makes me real thankful for the safe spaces that have been created for
Hmm.
me, because
Hmm.
it makes me feel like, it's okay. I don't have to be uncomfortable talking about this, because it's literally the same. Like, it would be like someone just saying like I had a heart attack, and someone being like, oh, don't talk about that, because we don't want you to talk about having a heart attack. It's like,
Right.
really? Like, I just had a heart attack.
I just had a heart attack. What are you talking about?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think, and continuing to work, as long as, we continue to create these safe spaces, in different settings too, not even conventional settings. Like, it's not always in a therapeutic setting, but even going back to social media, we're talking about, like, the way that we're operating right now, I feel like it's creating a lot of safe spaces for people that follow us to say like, hey, like, I
Yeah.
have a question about this, or,
Hmm.
this is what I've been dealing with. I saw something you posted about. So I think that's like, I don't know. I feel like I take pride in that part of the work, and doing that for people, because I hate feeling like, I know how it feels to feel like you can't talk about something. So I never want people to feel like they have to suppress how they're feeling, because they're embarrassed that, someone's gonna look at them crazy, or, whatever they think may happen. So I just think we continue to do that work. I think we're going to continue to make it even more safe to talk about, and I'm interested to see what it's going to look like even 15 years from now. And
Yes. Interesting. As you were talking, it made me think about the fact that, so you're 32,
mhm,
and so I'm 46, and you're in like the music industry, and I'm in a whole other industry. I've been in the medical and all this coach
mhm,
industry. But here's the thing that's so common, like we've had very similar experience from a mental health perspective,
mhm,
and it stands out, like the stigma in our community is very similar. And so I wanted to ask you, just particularly as a young Black man,
mhm.
what is it, I know that you in your family, you've experienced two different realms of it, but what's it like? What do you think is the barrier for Black men specifically around mental health these days?
I think it could be some different things. Um, I really think it's generational. A lot of the times it has to do with how through the generations we've been taught to deal with hardship, or what we should even view as true hardship. Because, growing up in, the Black community, Black family, and dealing with some of the struggles that are very specific to that community, for someone to say, I'm sad, or, I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, it's easy for some members of that community to say, oh, like, that's like, you're not really sad, because, you're not dealing with this, or, when you deal with, your friend going to jail, like, some, I don't know, just putting it on something else, on some, like,
Yeah.
then you can talk about being sad. So it's almost like
Mm,
downplaying, because there's a lot of other things that we're struggling with. So some of the times, pushing this to the side, like, we can't even talk about being sad for no reason. Like, you're just not feeling good for, like, yeah, we can't talk about this because I'm worried about trying to pay this rent. I'm worried about, keeping, food on the table. I'm worried about, uh, you know, the county building. I'm worried. Like, it's just so many different things. So I feel
mhm,
like some of the times it's it's downplayed. And I can remember feeling some of the times like, should I bring this up? Because in the grand scheme of things, like, maybe this isn't really like the toughest thing that's going on right now. So
mhm,
maybe I can just hold off on, bringing that up. Cause I know that, uh, mom is probably more stressed than me, because, she has this going on, and my dad has this going on. So I just kind of, hold back on saying anything. And then two, I just think it's these gender roles, I think some of the times,
mhm,
specific to race, even, where, unless you come up meeting a lot, or I'll just say me specifically, like, I didn't come across a lot of Black men at a young age who were okay with talking about these type of things. So I started to think at some points, like, this just isn't the type of stuff that we talk about. And I think it's a lot of different layers. I think it's a lot of different reasons it could be like that. But those are at least two of the ones that I can really think of, like, right offhand.
yeah. And this so speaks to generational conversations because here you are, how many years younger than me, and it's the same conversation. It's the exact same conversation,
Hmm.
except for the fact that you do have male specific conversations, right? Like, I can't talk about this because I'm a man, but
Right.
there is the whole in our generation, oh, like, keep it moving. You got to keep it moving. We got
Mhm.
bigger things to worry about, right?
Mhm.
And in Black women, it's like the whole strong Black woman narrative. Like,
Mhm.
you can't cry. What are you talking about? You go feed these kids.
Yep.
Like, now you're working. You got to hold down. You can't show weakness in the workplace. You're the strong Black woman.
Mhm.
You got to hold your man down. You got to hold everybody down. You're the pillar of the household.
Mhm.
And you're the one that's got to hold it all together. If you're not strong, then nobody else can be strong.
Mhm.
And so that sort of falls on us, or we've sort of inherited it, right, and then have kept it as our own.
Mhm.
And I just released a podcast a few weeks ago with a colleague of mine, and we talked about the damage that can do, like this whole strong Black woman narrative.
Mhm.
And I believe that exists in the Black men as well, like this strong Black man type of narrative. But then there's an added layer for you all, like, this is something we just don't talk about. But even
Mhm.
growing up, it was the same thing when I was in residency. And I had, my not my first, but my second round of like really significant depression,
Mhm.
where I was suicidal. And of course, I didn't call my family.
Mhm.
But I did call that night. I called a few friends, and then the next morning I got some medication. And when I called my mom, and this speaks to her, the generational conversation, right? So it's not like specific to my mom, right, or
Mhm.
specific to my dad. Mom's was like, well, oh well, we don't do medication, right? We don't do medication. That's not what we do. And then my dad was like, oh, you'll get through this. You're strong. Oh, you can get through this. You can and both of my parents, by the way, are in the medical field, which is that's also a conversation that happens in the medical community too. Right.
Mhm.
Oh, you just push through it. You just push through it. Right. So it's
Mhm.
so it's generational. It's also like the we don't do that. That's our community. That's the Black community.
Mhm.
And we don't talk about that. We don't do that. We push this under the rug. And then it's just some I think some very gender specific, like you said, gender role specific type things as well. So it's just interesting to me because that conversation came from my parents. It was passed to me, and I see it in my colleagues. And now, like speaking to you, it's like, oh, how do we break the cycle? Like this, I think these conversations are the conversations that are going to break the cycle when we have people like you who come to the forefront, who are being creative in bringing awareness, through your music. And we
Mhm.
have artists speaking out, and we have doctors speaking out. And we have to break the cycle of silence and this old conversation of we don't talk about that. Yes, we do talk about that. We should talk about that so that we can prevent the extreme, which is either death or homelessness. Right?
Right.
Homelessness, death, poverty, all of the things that come with untreated,
Mhm.
undiagnosed mental illness. Sometimes it's diagnosed and untreated. Sometimes it's
Right.
just undiagnosed, right?
Yeah. Some of the times I think those extreme circumstances like homelessness or, I say for me, like, there's been a couple of times before where, my depression has been to a point of, being hospitalized. And even though that's like a really extreme circumstance, I feel like it does or can work together for the greater good, because I feel like it was
Mhm,
in those moments where some of the same people who may have been able to push this off because, they didn't see like mental illness directly affecting them, but
mm,
to see someone that is either their son or to see someone who's their brother or a good friend to a point of being hospitalized, like some of the times those are moments where some of those same people will really be like, whoa, like I really, I'm sorry that I, treated it that way, but now I see how serious it really is. Because
mm,
to hear it from you is like one thing, but to know like, no, you're in a hospital somewhere because of this, your mental state, or you're homeless, you haven't lived inside, you haven't been able to take
mhm,
care of yourself, even to eat day to day because
yeah,
of what you have going on mentally. And then some of those people then become some of the strongest advocates too. So, I just think it's a lot more work that needs to be done, but I think it's at least this is my optimism that it's still leading to a larger awareness and acceptance of all of this.
yeah. And I think too, for our generation and for my parents' generation, because I know that there can be some guilt around, like when your child has a mental illness, blaming oneself,
Yeah.
like I always say, and it may be harsh to say. It's like, oh, I know my child's going to end up in therapy someday, but it's not because, like, I did something wrong. It's just like we all deal with stuff, right? And
Right.
therapy is not a bad thing. It's like, oh, I know, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do something. I give my child all the loves and all the hugs and do all the things that I can. But the thing is, we all do the best we can with the resources that we have.
Hmm.
And so, when I talk about, what our parents' generation and what, my generation has done or has not said, or has the environment that has been created, as we're breaking the cycle. I also want to acknowledge that, we do, like, we all do the best we can with the resources that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and that I know that none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. And that I think, just again, having these conversations and bringing that awareness will allow us to get rid of any guilt too, for what we think, that we think that we're doing wrong, or think that we're not getting right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important to acknowledge that as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's been times like I don't have children yet, but God willing, that's definitely something that I would like. But there's been some times where I felt, even, before they're not even here yet, but I felt like myself thinking deep into the future and feeling guilty because I'm like, you know, they might be more predisposed to, having a mental illness due to me having one. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
very real. So I really can only imagine with actually having a child or being a mother, because I think some of the times, as children, like we idolize our parents, so we don't really see, or when I was a child, idolize our parents, and we can't really see some of the things that they deal with. We just think like this is who's gonna make my food for me when I want a snack. This is who's gonna do all these other things, and not really
Right.
realize this is a whole person with, their own trauma from their upbringing, or, whatever they've been through. And they're bringing a lot to the table too. So I think all around this, you know, um, everyone has their own stuff that they're working on. And so it's hard to classify everyone, or, pinpoint and say this person is fine, this person's got this going on. I just think I'm just learning, like, and just trying to treat everyone right, and trying to, be as kind to everyone as possible, because it's like you literally know like what they just left from going through, what they're going through now, or how close to the edge that person might be. So
That's right. Oh man, you never know. You never know, what how one small action can make or break someone's day, and what traumas they've experienced. It's interesting with my I well I know a lot of what my mom experienced growing up because I was with her, like the trauma that she's experienced. But then,
mm,
even like I learned over time some of the traumas that I didn't know that, like, say, my dad experienced, because I didn't necessarily grow up with him.
mm,
And it's just interesting to know that. But again, pulling it back around, i I really think these conversations make the difference, because I think with each generation, the more we talk about it, the more we start to really look at things differently. Than we are sort of remapping, in a way, the way we
mm,
talk about, think about, speak about these things, and understanding. And then you can look back and understand, oh, this is what our parents went through. And then, like, younger and younger, um, will people will the young people will begin to understand, because I am actually a lot more open with my son about my
mm,
emotions.
mm.
I have a joke. I don't do feelings. I don't like feelings, but I do. But I'm trying to create an emotionally intelligent son, and
Yeah.
so I talk about my feelings a lot more with my son. Like, oh, I'm cranky today, or I'm having a
Mm,
bad day, or I feel a swirl of emotions, or I didn't get a good night's sleep, or I had a bad dream, or the appropriate things to talk to 6-year-olds about. And it in
mm,
turn makes him, when he's having a bad day, I feel grumpy today, and we can talk about these things. And so now I feel, I'm feeling more confident that, you know as even as he'll deal with whatever he deals with, but he'll
mm,
be able to talk about it, and he'll be able to teach. Should he have children, he'll be able to teach them, and so on and so forth. So I think each time we have these types of conversations, generation to generation, we are, and especially in our community, in the Black community, we are empowering ourselves to break that cycle of silence.
yeah. I agree with that. I really wish 32-year-old me could sit down with, like, my grandparents when I was like
Yeah.
16. Like, if I could
Mhm.
go back and communicate this, because at that age, I didn't know how to have this type of conversation with them. But I really wish that, I could do that, because I think that they will have a lot of light bulb moments. So I just say all that to say I completely agree. I think as long as we keep having a conversation, I've seen it. I've seen it with, my dad. I've seen it with
Mhm.
my mom has always been supportive, but I think just in actually learning more about, what I've dealt with mentally, like has made her even more supportive. Certain friends that it may have been weird to talk about where like now I can open up a little bit more with some of them. So it's like it's just a work in progress, honestly. But I
It
think we're
really
we're
is.
doing the right thing though.
We're doing the good work,
That's right.
getting in some good trouble.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, man, I could talk about this all day with you. This has been such an amazing conversation, as
It
I knew
has
it would
been.
be.
Yeah.
And
I
so
I
I just,
actually I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was
oh
about to say
no,
speaking of like safe space, I think I might have said this before, but like I really appreciate your platform because when you enter certain platforms, you may feel like, okay, I have to be like a certain way, or I'm a rapper, going on, somebody's platform that's, a medical professional, so I have to change. But I really feel like I can be myself, and that's why, like, I just appreciate that. I wanted to say thank you. That
you
that
are
means a lot.
so welcome. Well, I always say I'm not that your average doctor. People like me meet me like, you're a doctor? Yes, but I'm also a poet. Did I tell you that last time?
No, you
I
didn't.
write poetry. I used
I
to
didn't
do
know
I
that.
used to do spoken word. I used to actually have a spoken word joint here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So really, I've got that artist vein in me as well.
Right.
But yeah, no, I feel like that. I don't know. I just feel like it's important to be oneself, and I
Yeah.
know I've always been sort of square peg round hole because all I can do is be myself, and this is
Mhm.
myself. And so creating a platform where people can be themselves and for us to talk about the things that we don't be talking about
Yeah.
is so important. So I'm glad that it's a safe space. You felt like it was a safe space
Yeah.
to completely be you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
once again, give the listeners your information where they can follow you and they can listen to your music and they can hear about all the things that you're up to.
Yeah. So you all can follow me on all social media. I really just Instagram is my primary platform, so you're not going to see a lot on Twitter or Facebook, but all of them are the real B Russ. So the real BRUSS. You can find my music on Spotify, on Apple Music, on basically all of the digital streaming platforms. So you can just look up B Russ on there. My music is also on SoundCloud. So if you don't have a paid subscription to a streaming platform, then you can check it out on there too. So stay tuned. I'm looking forward to. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, just getting some things together, but I'm looking forward. I'm looking at April is kind of like the month I'm really gonna come back swinging with all the content. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yay! Yes, and go buy his music. Be streaming it on no free platforms, y'all. Y'all go buy his music. So
That's
look,
right.
that's
That's
the
right.
entrepreneur of me. That's a business person to me. You go buy this brother's music. Don't be streaming it free on no darn SoundCloud. Buy it.
That's right. No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I support supporting black businesses and I support black businesses. So it's like,
Absolutely.
look, you are a business. You have a business. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, we'll have all of that also on our show notes as we did before. So people
Okay.
want to hang out with you in Apple Music on IG, and if you're local, when you start performing live again, when you start,
Yes.
because I'm sure
Yes.
that at some point you will when
Yeah,
this
I'm
whole
I'm really looking
pandemic thing.
forward. I'm looking forward to it. It's been I was just telling someone that recently. It's been the last time I performed live, it was actually in October for like an outdoors, like kind of like a festival. So it was
Hmm.
pretty safe, but um it's been way too long. I miss being able to just go out more consistently and perform and meeting up with other artists I haven't seen in like a long
Yes.
time. And
Yes.
yeah, so hopefully, God willing, we get back to that sooner than later.
Soon and very soon,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
you stay safe out there. It was so great to have you back
Yeah,
on, and
likewise. Yeah.
I'm sure it won't be the last
Oh
time.
no, definitely not. Definitely not.
All right, y'all. Well, You heard it here on Remap Your Mind, the real B Russ. Please go check him out on Instagram. Go check out his music on the streaming platforms, the paid ones, please. And and y'all know if y'all want some deeper work and you feel like you need some deeper personal rapid transformation work, that you can always visit me at Remap My Mind. And the real star today, though, is our friend B Russ. So without listeners, there is no podcast. So I always like to thank the listeners for being here with us. Please leave your comments and reviews so that other people listening behind you know that our show is legit. And so we will see you on the next episode. Have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week.
Yeah.
Namaste.